A parchment page lies open in the British Library. The ink is dark. The letters are Ge'ez. On one folio, the title reads Mashafa Kufale. On another, Mashafa Enoch, Jubilees, Enoch. Two books many Western Christians never see in their Bibles. This is not a modern conspiracy document. It is British Library, or 485, an Ethiopian manuscript witness to books copied as scripture. The Ethiopian Orthodox Canon still names both of them, 81 books in all, 46 in the Old Testament, 35 in the New. So the mystery is not that Ethiopia has strange books. The mystery is simpler and deeper. Why did Ethiopia keep reading what much of the West stopped copying as scripture? Online, this is often called the West secretly removed Ethiopia's Bible, but that phrase hides a more complicated story. The real evidence does not point to one hidden meeting, one forbidden Bible, or one act of erasure. It points to canon history, translation history, and manuscript survival. Athanasius, in his 39th festal letter in 367, gave a famous list of accepted books. Enoch and Jubilees are not there. The councils of Hippo in 393 and Carthage in 397 and 419 helped shape Latin Christian lists. Again, not there. Trent in 1546 fixed the Roman Catholic canon with the deuterocanonical books, but not Enoch or Jubilees. Westminster in 1646 rejected the Apocrypha from the Protestant canon entirely. Ethiopia's list developed along a different road. That difference is not a rumor. It is written in church lists, scroll catalogs, and parchment. To understand why Ethiopia preserved these books, we have to begin with Aksum, not as an isolated mountain kingdom, but as a Christian power tied to the Red Sea. In the 4th century, under King Ezana, Aksum became one of the early Christian kingdoms of the world. Coins from his reign bear witness to that change, including cross imagery in the royal world of Aksum. Rufinus, and later Christian tradition, link Frumentius with the beginnings of the Ethiopian bishopric. And that bishopric was connected to Alexandria. This matters. Ethiopia did not receive Christianity at the edge of the map. It received it through ports, trade routes, Greek-speaking Christian channels, and the world of the Septuagint. The biblical language that emerged was Ge'ez, or Classical Ethiopic. Translation came through Greek and related Eastern Christian streams. The Garima Gospels, preserved in Ethiopia, show an early and remarkably sophisticated Ge'ez gospel manuscript culture. They are not a complete Ethiopian Bible, but they do show that Ethiopia was producing and preserving Christian books at a very high level. According to the Ethiopian tradition, Scripture lived not only in official lists, but in worship, copying, teaching, and monastery libraries. The manuscript trail is what keeps this story honest. Word Enoch, known in Ethiopic as Mashafa Enoch, survives complete in Ge'ez. Jubilees, Mashafa Kufale, survives complete in Ge'ez as well. But neither book began as a medieval Ethiopian invention. The Dead Sea Scrolls prove that both were ancient Jewish texts in circulation before Christianity. Qumran Cave 4, discovered in 1952, produced Aramaic fragments of Enoch. The Israel Antiquities Authority's Leon Levy. Dead Sea Scrolls, Digital Library Catalogs, 4Q201 and 4Q202 as Aramaic Enoch Witnesses. J.T. Millick with Matthew Black published the landmark edition of the Cave 4 Aramaic Enoch Fragments, while Henrik Drawnel's Oxford work treats the Aramaic astronomical book Witnesses, especially 4Q208 through 4Q211. Together with the other Enoch fragments, the broader Cave 4 Enochic Witness reaches about 11 manuscripts. Jubilees tells the same kind of story. It was composed in Hebrew, probably in the mid-2nd century before Christ, as a rewriting of Genesis and Exodus 1 through 12. The IAA catalogs 4Q216 as Hebrew Jubilees from Cave 4, and the Qumran evidence includes fragments numbered 4Q216 through 4Q224, with other cave witnesses as well. Then the trail moves south and east into Ge'ez. British Library, or 485, contains Jubilees beginning on folio 1R and Enoch beginning on folio 102R. Other Ethiopic witnesses include B&F Ethiopian Dabadi, 55 in Paris, John Ryland's Ethiopic MS-23 in Manchester, and holdings at the Bodleian in Cambridge. HMML's Ethiopian Manuscript Microfilm Library preserved 9,238 Ethiopian manuscript project numbers from 1973 to 1994. The manuscript evidence suggests a long chain, not a sudden invention. What did Ethiopia keep reading? Not one simple book, but a theological world. Werned Enoch is a composite Jewish apocalyptic work. It was not written by the biblical patriarch himself. Its major sections are usually dated between roughly the 3rd century before Christ and the 1st century after Christ, though scholars remain divided on some sections, especially the parables. The book is often described in 5 parts: the Book of the Watchers, the Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch. What the text itself says is vivid. 1 Enoch 1:9 declares, "And behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all." That line matters because Jude 14 and 15 echo it in the New Testament. This does not prove that Enoch belongs in every Christian canon, but it does raise a fascinating question. A text outside most Western Bibles is still heard inside the New Testament. Then comes the Watchers tradition. 1 Enoch 6:1-2 expands the strange few lines of Genesis 6. What the text itself says is, "The angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them." It is not a monster story in the modern sense. It is an ancient attempt to explain corruption, violence, forbidden knowledge, and judgment. Later in the book, 1 Enoch 46:1-2 introduces the head of days and another figure whose countenance had the appearance of a man. For readers of Daniel, the Gospels, and Revelation, that world feels both familiar and strange. Jubilees is different, but just as important. It is sometimes called Little Genesis, or the Book of Divisions. In 50 chapters, it retells Genesis and Exodus 1-12. It organizes sacred history into jubilees, weeks of years, covenants, festivals, angels, law, and calendar. What the text itself says in Jubilees 6:17 is that the Feast of Weeks was ordained and written on the heavenly tablets to renew the covenant every year. That phrase, heavenly tablets, tells us much. For Jubilees, history is not random. Time itself is ordered before God. James C. Vanderkam, the major modern editor and commentator on Jubilees, used 27 Ethiopic manuscripts in his critical work. Lauren T. Stuckenbrook's current work on Werned Enoch draws on 33 Ge'ez manuscript witnesses, far beyond the 8 used by Michael Knibb in 1978. Annette Yoshiko Reed has shown how Enochic traditions moved through Jewish and Christian imagination for centuries. These books endured because they gave readers a full world: judgment, covenant, calendar, angels, worship, and the deep memory of Genesis. Canon is not only a table of contents. Canon is also memory. It is what a community reads, copies, chants, teaches, and protects. In much of the West, the boundaries hardened without Enoch and Jubilees. Athanasius's 39th Festal Letter in 367 is a landmark. It does not include them. The regional councils of Hippo in 393 and Carthage in 397 and 419 helped shape the Latin biblical lists. They do not include them either. The Council of Nicaea did not choose the books of the Bible. That is a later shortcut, and a misleading one. Trent, Session 4 in 1546, fixed the Roman Catholic canon, including the Deuterocanonical books, but still without Enoch and Jubilees. The Westminster Confession of 1646 went further in Protestant practice, rejecting the Apocrypha as canon. Ethiopia's boundaries hardened differently. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church publicly lists 81 books, 46 Old Testament books, and 35 New Testament books. Jubilees and Enoch are named in that Old Testament list. That does not erase Protestant, Roman Catholic, or Eastern Orthodox canons. It does show that Christian canon history was not one straight Western line, preserved in Ethiopia, debated in scholarship, forgotten by much of the West. The honest answer is preservation by continuity, not suppression by conspiracy. Ethiopia had early Ge'ez translation culture. It had ecclesial links with Alexandria. It had monastic and church copying traditions strong enough to carry books across centuries. It also stood at a distance from the later Latin medieval debates and from Protestant canon disputes. That distance mattered. Books classified elsewhere as pseudepigrapha could remain scriptural in Ethiopia. Alessandro Bausi, a leading scholar of Ethiopian studies and a major figure associated with the Beta Massa at FT project, emphasizes the depth and range of Ethiopian manuscript culture from the Aksumite period into the 20th century. HMML and EMML show the scale of what survived. Thousands of manuscripts and microfilms from Ethiopian repositories. Scholars remain divided on important questions. The exact dates of some Enochic sections remain debated. Qumran popularity does not automatically prove scriptural status. The precise pathway from Greek into Ge'ez is still being studied, and the practical shape of the 81-book Ethiopian Canon has not always matched every printed Bible in the same way, but three things are secure. Ethiopia preserved complete Ge'ez, Enoch and Jubilees. Qumran proves their ancient Semitic roots, and the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition received them as scripture. What survives is not always what was originally written. Sometimes it is what a community loved enough to copy again and again until the rest of the world had to notice. Ethiopia's canon does not undo the Western Bible. It reminds us that the biblical world was larger than the later Western shelf. Complete in Ge'ez, ancient in the caves of Qumran, and living in Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, Enoch and Jubilees were preserved, not invented. There are more shelves like this one, and more manuscripts waiting in the half-light. If that world draws you in, subscribe to the Hidden Canon, and we will keep opening the archive.